Richard Dawson works with the oddest and most angular melodies and song structures. I mean, I'll get this out of the way. I don't think this album is for everyone. In my opinion, it's very good, but the shaping and the sounds of each song is so sour and off-kilter and off-key. It's quite an acquired taste. That shouldn't stop you from at least giving it a try if you've got quite the open mind towards very experimental and out there songs, because this is still a fantastically written and performed and just composed record. Once you've adjusted to his songwriting style, it's easy to enjoy what is probably Richard Dawson's most fine-tuned and luscious album yet. Richard Dawson is a singer-songwriter from the UK. His previous releases have been pretty noisy, very impenetrable, especially his last release, which is, I think, Nothing Important, I think it was called. And he had this style of folk music that was very inspired by traditional folk music, but also some medieval folk as well. However, Nothing Important really just combined this with some avant-garde elements, maybe a bit of electronics too, some ambient music. On Peasant, this album is like if a band of medieval folk musicians were set on fire, but they were completely fine with it, so they just kept playing anyways. The string instruments on this album, either acoustic guitars or lutes, I can't quite tell, but they definitely have this sour twang to them, and they really buzz with every plucked string and every note on this record. And Dawson's tenor singing vocals can sing melodies that are certainly on the right notes, but the melody he sings might sound completely detached from the melody of the instrumental. On Ogre, he even has several voice cracks that sound like he's expressing some sort of pain or anguish or angst. Richard Dawson takes the traditional elements of lyrics and melody and song structure of the general sound of folk music and just twists them until they snap. However, somehow this thing does sound quite magical. There are so many moments on here that make me want to keep listening, like the refrain on Ogre, which features these triumphant group vocals. Although while the album is very lush instrumentally, this album gets pretty dark and grim. It's not like some murderous, gory sort of stuff, but it's just very disturbing to listen to. Peasant focuses on describing the primal and uncivilized aspects of life in medieval times. Compared to society now, each track explores some kind of character archetype of that period, be it a beggar, or prostitute, or soldier, or a weaver. All the way through the song Soldier, Dawson and crew are able to convey that fear, as well as the fatigue of a soldier going into the battlefield. It's a futile song because it never sounds like the battle's happening, but the soldier's ultimately still feeling quite fearful and quite tired in this landscape where nothing seems to be happening. The track Prostitute is a very bare but poignant acoustic song about the notion of selling other humans. On this track specifically, I don't think all the screechy electronic drones near the end were too necessary, but I still say that I enjoyed this track because it has very upfront lyrics on an album where the lyrics in general just seem to be quite cryptic or obtuse in comparison. How is it so a child can be bought for a year's worth of grain? In this day and age, it's hard to explain, but it happens again and again. The track Shapeshifter starts off with a very bouncy and almost atonal acoustic melody for its first minute and a half, but then it bursts into the chorus. Dawson sings wildly in this falsetto vocal, and the tempo gets faster and even pretty frantic. Scientist is quite a heavily layered track that sounds more like a jig than anything really, though again its lyrics are pretty reflective of the society this album is based upon, a scientist having his new contraption scrutinized and rejected and told not to employ it or else he may face the dire consequences. Considering this is an album featuring images of newborns being dangled from strings and children being taken from their homes without warning, I wouldn't hesitate for a second to think that these consequences would be pretty f***ing dire. But imagine being in the situation of the dastardly 10-minute closer Masseuse, where the narrator finds themselves bound and gagged and actually ready to have their eyes gouged out. The album's final moments are terrifying. They feature a choir repeating the lines, "I once could see, but now I'm blind, and all sense of the world is lost." It's really gruesome, but for a fat moment I was immersed in that situation, imagining like I was a witness of that whole scenario happening. I mean, sure, this album may be incredibly grim and twisted in its imagery and its concept, and musically especially, it's very twisted in its melody and everything like that. But it's also very lush, and at times, very beautifully composed and performed. This is one of my favourite folk releases of the year for sure. It's so intriguing, but there was something just eerily gratifying about it. Dawson just flourished on this new LP of his. I'm giving this album an 8 out of 10. Yeah.